everyone, welcome to Tutorials by Dacade. My name is Dacade, and today we are going to work on some NPCs. So before I get into that, make sure you give this video a big old thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe as I have videos like this coming out all the time, and I don't want you to miss anything. And now that that's out of the way, let's get to it. So first things first, we're going to have to bring in the artwork for the NPC. And since I'm using, I do believe it's player character 4, I'm just going to use player character 1. First, make sure you go in and change the pixels per unit to 16, filter mode to no filter, and quality compression to none. Make sure you hit apply. And then sprite editor, slice, grid by cell size, 16 by 32. Then hit slice, apply, and close that on out. And then we can take our NPC and just drop it anywhere in the scene. You know me, I like to be precise. So now that we're in there, come on, quit fighting me. We'll just do it the hard way then. 4.5 and 3. You know what? I don't like that positioning. We'll move you right there. That looks like maybe 5.5 and 3.5. There we go. Then obviously we got to bring the NPC to the front here. So we will put the NPC on the player layer, -1 on that. And we'll fix layers in a later video because right now the way I have it set up is the player, if the player walks in front of the NPC, the player will be in front of the NPC. But then if the player walks behind the NPC, the player will also be in front of the NPC. So that is something we are going to fix later. Not right now, but that is something we're going to fix. All right, so for the NPC, we need to first, let's just name the NPC. And we're going to need to add a couple things. So first things we're going to add here is a rigid body. Now, this NPC is going to be stationary. It is not going to move, so all you have to do is hit static on body type, and we shouldn't have to do anything else. Yeah, we shouldn't have to do anything else with rigid body. But other NPCs are not going to be static. They will move around. They'll do things. But this NPC is literally going to be stationary. It is going to stand there, follow the player around, and the player will be able to interact with the NPC. All right. So let's add a couple other things, like a box collider, 2D, and we'll edit this one to be, you know what, just to avoid the player being able to walk behind, we will make the box collider the size of the NPC. There we go. We're also going to need to add another box collider. This is going to be where the player can interact with the NPC. So make it as big as you think it needs to be for the player to be able to enter that area and interact. And then don't forget to make sure that that is a trigger, so that way, oh, not that one, this one. So that way, when the player enters and exits the zone, it'll trigger certain events, such as being able to interact. Now that we have those edited and out of the way, we can close that. And even though this NPC isn't going to move, we still need an animator because even though it's not moving, it's still going to turn to face the player. And I thought I changed this to NPC. Why did it not? There we go. And then once that is out of the way, we can start doing the animation. I may skip this part, or fast forward, doesn't matter, because we've done this a bunch of times. So Alright, so now that we have our animations, we got to go to the animator. And again, I may skip this part as we have done this before. If you don't remember how to do this, or if you have never seen this before, make sure you go back to my player animations and my enemy animations. This is all essentially the exact same process where nothing really changes with this. The only thing we need to do is that, really. So, yeah, I'm gonna fast forward. Okay, once we have the animation set up, um, we can start working on coding, scripting, whatever you want to call it. So in order to do that, we're going to go to our scripts folder. We are going to add a new folder in here and call it NPC. And then in that folder, we are going to create a mono behavior script. And this one, we're just going to name it NPC state. And in NPC state, once Unity's done doing what it's doing here, all we're going to do is add the state machine once Visual Studio opens, because I forgot to do that. There we go. So in my last video where I was just talking about some mistakes that I've made and things like that, one of the things I mentioned was each little system should be its own script. With that being said, the state machine that we created in the player over here at the very top, there we go, this guy, this is the state machine. That should technically be its own script. So we're going to start doing that for the enemy, or not enemy, the NPC. So public enum NPC state, and then for now the only states are idle, moving, and interacting, which we're not going to do really anything with these right now, but it's good to set this up for the future. So now we got to go back into Unity here. Once this compiles, we are going to create another mono behavior script and name it base NPC. And here's where we're going to do a lot of the work. We are going to that one yet. Hold on. Come on, quit fighting me. There we go. Now I open up that base NPC, but this is where a large majority of the work is going to be done. And then we're only going to override certain things. And I'll go over all of that with you here, starting with all of the variables. Now, before we do any of the variables, actually, we are going to need to add a couple using statements up here. Sometimes Unity and Visual Studio will automatically add them, but to save a giant headache later, we are going to just add those now. So first, we're going to using system.collections.generic. We're also going to be using tmpro. We're still going to use the Unity engine, but we're also going to be using Unity engine.ui. So now we can actually work on the variables, and we're going to organize things here. So header, NPC, movement state. And then the tooltip here is going to be the movement state of the NPC. We're going to serialize that field, and we're going to do a protected NPC state equals NPC state dot idle. So all this is doing is connecting that state machine that we made earlier, and it's connecting it to the base NPC. So any NPC that we create from this point forward will have that system. Next, we're going to do header and NPC stats. And then we're going to do a tooltip. The NPC's name. we are going to serialize that field. And we're going to do a protected string NPC name. Then we're going to do another tooltip, NPC move speed. Now, even though this NPC is going to be stationary, since this is the base NPC script, we want to add the move speed in here for future NPCs. That way we won't have to script multiple times. We can just do it all at once. And the stationary NPC, we just have to override its movement. That's all. Next thing we're going to do is the distance the NPC notices the player. And we're going to serialize that field. And it's going to be called protected float detection range. Then we're going to need to add two bools that do not need to be serialized. So protected bool player in range, and protected bool is interacting. Now, for those of you that were here with the interactable objects when we made that sign, some of this is going to look familiar, and that's because it is going to be familiar. Some of it is not going to be familiar, and we're going to go over one of those things right now. We are going to add a header here, UI settings and dialog. This is a header. Let's do proper stuff here. There we go. And then the very first thing we're going to add here is a tooltip. And does the NPC have branching dialog? This will be overridden if true. So we're preparing ourselves for branching dialog, but we're not going to get into that other than getting it set up. So we're going to default that to false, and there we go. Now, just like with the sign, we do need a text bubble, so boom, and we will serialize that field. This should be serialized. There we go. Serialize that field, and then we're going to do protected image, and then text bubble. Another one, tooltip, reference to TMP-RO, text fields, TMP Pro. And serialize that field, protected, TMP, text, bubble text. And then instead of doing just one single line, what we're going to do is set it up where there's going to be a list of dialogue where the player can keep hitting the interact button to go through the list of everything that is that the NPC has to say. And then after the NPC is done saying what it needs to say, then it'll close everything out. So it'll be similar to the sign, but not quite. But we're still going to set it up like the sign. So private list string NPC dialog lines equals new list string. So I don't know if we've done a list yet or not, but essentially a list is well, exactly what it says, a list of things that we can add. In this case, it'll be a list of strings. And we will go over how to do lists as we get to it. But for now, that's all you need to know is how to actually get it set up. One thing we do need is a protected int current dialog index. So an index is essentially a list. And every list starts at actual 0 instead of 1. So if you have 3 things in the list, it'll be labeled as 0, 1, and 2, not 1, 2, and 3. So just remember that 0 is actually the first thing in a list. And we're going to need to know that as we go a little further. And then a couple more things that we need to do. Header, and then references, and then tooltip, the player's transform, and serialize that field, and then what is going on today? All right, protected transform, and then player, then protected rigid body 2D, my rigid body, protected animator, there we go. And then we're going to do here a protected list string NPC dialog lines. Then we're going to do in brackets here get NPC dialog lines set NPC dialog lines equals value. So what we did there, you cannot have this be protected right off the bat, where it says private list string. For whatever reason, Unity doesn't like it, so you have to create a protected list. Name it a little bit different, so we just capitalize the N in NPC. And then have it get what it needs from this private thing. So that way, whenever we create overrides and stuff, we'll have all this stuff still here. So that's all that was there. So now that we got that out of the way, we can actually start working on scripting a few things. So we're going to do a protected virtual void and start. Ignore my phone. All right, so first my rigid body equals get component rigid body 2D. Now what you should be doing is anytime that you're telling the script to go get something, you should be doing some sort of check. So what I'm doing here is after the script goes to find the rigid body 2D, I'm going to add this little check here where if for whatever reason it can't find it or there isn't one, it is going to log an error if I can type. That way, whenever you're going through, whenever your games get bigger and all that stuff, it's easier to find mistakes and errors by adding essentially just this if statement. Now, I'm only doing this as an example. I'm not going to do it on all of these, but this is a good habit to get into. So for time purposes, I'm not going to type all this out right now, but you should be doing that. Oh, not animation, animator. There we go. All right. So that is all we need to do for start. Now we're gonna get an update method going here. And in the update method, we're going to put these two things in that are going to give errors for right now. But once we're done, those errors will go away. And again, while you're scripting this stuff, unless you already have this stuff written down somewhere, or unless you just know off the top of your head what you're going to call stuff, usually you wouldn't be putting that stuff in right away. But in this situation, I'm doing it just because I already know what this stuff's going to be. So the first thing we're going to do is make that handle NPC behavior. So we're going to do a protected virtual void handle NPC behavior. And in here, we're going to do if the player is null, meaning it doesn't exist, we're just going to return. So if we forget to add the player in there, we ain't going to do squat. But if the player is in there, we are going to do a float distance to player, creating a temporary variable. And it's going to be a vector2.distance. And it's going to be the distance between the transform of the NPC and the player. The position of both of those. And if the distance to player is less than or equal to the detection range, we are going to face the player, which we'll work on that here in a second, and on player nearby. Else, we're going to do on player far. Again, some methods that we're going to be creating here. But before we get into those, we have to create a couple other things here. We're going to do a protected void on trigger enter 2D. And for those of you that watched the video on creating the interactable sign, this is going to look awfully familiar, mainly because it is legitimately the exact same thing from the sign script. And then we need to do the exit. Oh, what am I doing today? All right, so now that those are out of the way, let's add a couple more things. We're going to do a protected virtual void start interaction. So, oh my God. I might just give up on today. Jeez. Anyway, so what we're going to do here is we are going to check to see if we're using branching dialog. And if so, we're just going to return and skip all of this because we're not doing branching dialogue. We're going to override that whenever we get to that point. But for now, we're going to do text bubble dot game object dot set active to true. We're going to do bubble text dot text equals NPC dialogue lines and then current dialogue index. So what that's doing is it's pulling that list of all the dialogue, and it is telling it what one to play essentially. And we'll go here very shortly over how to change that. But we need to do a virtual void end interaction. And that is going to be just text bubble dot game object dot set active to false and is interacting false. Then one more thing we need to do before we get into those other ones that we were working on, we need to do a protected virtual void advanced dialog. And then this is where we're going to do the current dialog index plus plus. So that's going to move the dialog index from 0 to 1, 1 to 2, so on and so forth. And then what we got to do is we got to check our current dialog index. And if it is greater than or equal to the NPC dialog lines dot count, so in other words, how many objects are in that list, then what we're going to do is we're going to end interaction, and we're going to set the current dialog index to 0. My cat's mad because I'm not letting him outside right now, but he'll get over it. And if we are not equal to or over the count, then what we're going to do is change the bubble text dot text, not that text, to NPC dialog lines current dialog index. So again, what we're doing is we're taking the current dialog index and we're adding 1 to it. So if it's at 0, it becomes 1. If it's at 1, it becomes 2, so on and so forth. Then we're checking the dialog index versus the count of how many things are in that list. If that count is equal to or greater than what's in that list, we're going to end the interact action. So we're going to shut down the text bubble and we're going to change interacting to false. And then we're going to reset the current dialog index to 0. However, if the current dialog index is less than the count, then we're just going to change the text that's in the bubble to the next line. So that's what's happening there. So now we got to do a couple more things and we'll be ready to test this out. So first, protected virtual void NPC interaction. And if player in range and input dot get button down interact. And some of this stuff's going to look familiar again for those of you that did the sign with me earlier. We are going to debug dot log. Oh, I'm jumping ahead here. So if using if uses dialog branch, there we go. Then again, we're just going to return because we don't have that set up yet, and that's going to be overridden. But anyway, in that, if we are not already is interacting, then we are going to start the interaction. But if we are interacting, or else, then we are going to advance dialog. That's all we need to do there. here we are going to do a protected virtual void on player nearby, and we are not going to do anything here. It needs to be overridden. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm looking at my nodes. My nodes. Oh my god. What a day. My notes. And I'm just double checking things. Plus, my cat's kind of getting mad at me and standing here staring at me in front of my screen so I can't see. But we're almost done, so I'll be able to let him out soon. We need to do that. And then we need to do this. And what these two things are going to be for is whenever we have moving NPCs. So later down the road, if we have an NPC that's wandering around and the player gets close enough, the NPC could walk up to the player, or the NPC can actually start the conversation. There's a whole different group of things that we can do with just these things right here. So that's why they're here, but we're not doing anything with them yet. And then we also need to do this. And this is where we're actually going to have the NPC face the player. So first we need a vector2 direction, which will be the player.position minus the NPC's position. And then what we're going to do here is mathf dot abs direction.x is greater than mathf dot abs direction.y. So what we're doing is we're checking to see what direction the player is facing. And this will be horizontal or east-west facing. West. There we go. Ignore my phone. We're going to do animator.set float. And then we're going to do move x. And direction dot x greater than 0. And then that little question mark is essentially going to tell it to set it to either 1 or -1. That's a very basic description of it, but I don't really have the time to get into it too much because I'm already going to be going over my time that I had for this video. But we're going to do animator.setFloat move y 0. This will allow the NPC to face either left or right, east or west, whatever the case may be. And then we're going to do else. And this is for vertical or north and south facing. And essentially it's going to be the exact same thing, but for the move y instead. Direction.y. And then animator.setFloat move x and 0. And that's it for the base NPC for right now. There is one more thing that we do need to do. And we'll let Unity compile first here. We need to create one more quick little monobehavior script. We're going to name this one stationary NPC. We are going to open this up. We are going to do all that. We got to remember to inherit from the base NPC. And then all we're going to do here is override handle NPC behavior. We're going to get rid of the base. And we're going to do only face the player. Do not move. And then float distance to player equals vector2 dot distance transform dot position player dot position. And then if distance to player is less than or equal to the detection range, then we're just going to face the player. So all we did here was just override all that other stuff that we did in the base and just do face the player. So that way if the player turns one direction or the other, the NPC will follow. So now that that is done and out of the way, we can let Unity compile. While I'm doing that, I'll check my time. And yeah, a little bit longer than I wanted to today, but that's okay. Now that that's all done, we're going to drop the stationary NPC script onto the NPC. We are going to name the NPC. We'll just name it Dan. Move speed doesn't really matter. Detection range we'll put as 5. So the text bubble, if you remember from the sign, we got to drop the text bubble there, and then the actual text goes there. The player, we got to drop the player there. Now right here where it says NPC dialog lines, we're going to click on that. It's going to say the list is empty. This little plus minus button here, we're going to hit the plus, and there's our first line of text. We're going to say hello. Now we could just leave the one line of text, but if we want, we can add another line of text. And then, how are you? And then, did you learn anything from this video? Then, if so, like and subscribe. And then, thank you. So, now we'll hit play. And assuming we didn't break anything, our player still moves around. Now the NPC doesn't react to the player because the player is not close enough. But the second we get close enough, you'll notice that the NPC will follow the player around. And then we can interact. Hello, how are you? Did you learn anything from this video? If so, like and subscribe, and thank you. So that is it for this video. There is our stationary NPC. So as the NPC said, if you like this video, make sure you give it the big old thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, as I have videos like this coming out all the time. And as always, thank you. Have a good one, and I'll see you on the next one.